to the second episode of the series, Sunday's Tips. So what we're going to talk about today is what I believe is one of the biggest problems and something that many people have not yet understand, and it's called the multiples of a stitch. So when we talk about a stitch and its multiples, this means that in our beginning chain, in every how many chains our pattern repeats itself. So when I have a rule that states that I need a multiple of 15, let's say for the pineapple stitch, this means that in every 15 chains that I work in the beginning, I will have a pineapple. Also, along with the multiples, we also have a number of chains that we need to add in the end. So we have a multiple of 15 plus 5, for example. Those 5 chains that we're going to add in the end are the chains that are going to help me when I turn to row number 1, that my design comes out correctly. So now let's go ahead and see how by looking a pattern, how we can take out the multiple, how by taking the multiple we can make a sample, and how by taking the sample we can adjust it to a bigger size. So take out a paper and pencil because we're going to work mathematics. Now let's see how from getting a pattern, how to get the multiple, how to get the rule out of that pattern, and how to adjust it on your crochet project. Now many times, many of the patterns that are out there, they already give us the rule under the chains. Okay, and what the rule is, what the multiples really are in every how many chains my pattern repeats itself. Okay, so right here in every 12 chains my pattern repeats itself. So what we want to do is, when given the number of chains that we have as a multiple, as a row, I want to start counting from the left of the chain that's in the margin over here, and start counting to see if in the sample given, if the rule repeats itself again, if my pattern repeats itself again. So I'm going to start counting to see if I have an extra 12 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So up to this chain, my pattern repeats itself one more time. So keep counting to see if we have an extra 12 stitches, an extra 12 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the pattern does not repeat itself again, but those extra chains over here are the extra chains that I'm going to add in the end of the row in order to, when I turn to row number 1, my pattern comes out correctly. But be careful, those chains are not the only ones that are left over. I also have 2 leftover chains in the beginning over here. See how the margin stops over here? We have 2 extra chains. So my multiple, the rule for this stitch is multiples of 12 plus 6 plus 2. So multiples of 12 plus 8. Okay? So I know that my rule is multiples of 12 plus 8. Now let's see how we can adjust this multiple on a project that we want to make. Let's say that we make a sample with the X type of yarn and the X type of crochet hook. So I'm going to work 2 repeats of the pattern, so 24 chains to begin with plus 8. So I want to start with a total of 32 chains. And I want to also crochet 10 rows to see how the pattern forms itself as you go through the rows, because there are some patterns that as you go through they tend to get narrower and some get wider. So you want to crochet at least 10 rows to see how your stitch goes through the rows. Okay, those 32 chains, they give me a 11 centimeter width and a 9 centimeter height. This part we will see on another video. Now we're going to see how this will help us adjust to our project. So let's say that I want to start with a piece that I want it to be 80 centimeters wide. Okay, what I want to see is how many times this piece that I made over here is going to fit in my 80 centimeter piece. So I'm going to take 80 divided by 11, and the result is 7.27. So this means that if I get 7.27 pieces out of 7.27 pieces that are the width that my sample was, and I glue them together, the one next to each other, I will have a piece that's 80 centimeters wide. But because we don't want to make small samples and stitch them together, what we want to do is we want to round this number up to a whole number, because I can't have 7.27 repeats. I want to have 7 repeats. Right here you have to be careful, because you might need to round up to the next bigger number, to number 8 for example, because your piece might get smaller if you round to the smaller number, okay? So you want to be careful over here. So I want 7 pieces out of this sample that I made over here. So what I want to do is I want to multiply the 24 chains that I started my piece with by 7, because I want 7 pieces that are this big, and the result is 168 chains plus the 8 chains that I want to add in the end. My result to begin with is 176 chains. So this is how a rule of a stitch, by crocheting a sample, you can get the rule, you can get your number of the beginning chains that you're going to need to start your work with. Now, sometimes we're not as lucky as over here, where we have the chains separated on the pattern. So many patterns out there, they don't have the chains under here, so we by ourselves have to sit down and find out what the repeat is. So what we have to do is we have to see in every how many chains the same pattern repeats itself. So by practicing on how these patterns look like, the ones that already state what the rule is, okay, by practicing a little by little, we will be able to find the pattern, the beginning rule by ourselves. And this we're going to see in another video. So this is how you get the multiples, and how to adjust them on a sample, and how to adjust the sample on a bigger piece. So in conclusion, what we've learned today is what is a multiple and what is the rule that we can use for a stitch. A multiple is in the number of chains that we work in the beginning, in every how many chains our pattern or the design repeats itself. And the chains that we always have to add in the end is the number of chains that we need when to turn to row 1, that our design comes out correctly. Thanks for watching. I would love to read your comments under the video if you found all the information helpful, and if you can now understand what a multiple is. And stay tuned for the next episode.